Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Northamptonshire Police Fire panel. So straight into business. So we've got apologies for non-attendance so James, do you want to take those?
Certainly, yes. So through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Baker with Councillor Lunn substituting, from Councillor Gonzalez de Savage with Councillor Clark substituting, Councillor Carr, Councillor Jelly substituting, and Councillor McGee, Councillor Anslow substituting. Also apologies from Ms Woodhouse as an independent member. There is no substitute for her.
Thank you. And do we have no notifications requested from members of the public to speak this afternoon?
That's correct.
So do you have any declarations of interest? Should you suddenly think you have, please do let me know. Thank you. So on to Chair's announcements. So I'm pleased to see Councillor Pritchard has rejoined the panel.
Thank you, Chair.
There was a slight glitch there, so apologies for that. So welcome back.
Thank you very much.
And that's in place of Councillor Anarchy. Then some sad news, Catherine Whitehead, she is retiring at the end of the month, and I'm not sure whether it's all that past 12 months that's done it, Catherine, but I'm sure that the panel would like to show our thanks for all the effort you put in. I know we spent many hours speaking, so Catherine, so thank you so much, and thank you for coming to this one. So moving to the minutes of the previous panel meetings, are you happy on block for me to sign those off? Is there any corrections? Councillor Clark?
Well, I've got a query on page 12, minute 248, the third last bullet. Northamptonshire Police Force had only 1.9 officers per 1,000 people, which was below the 2.9 officer level that the acting Chief Constable had identified to the PFCC as a minimum level. How and when do we expect to reach this minimum level?
I'm not sure how, so this is in a minute, so James, thoughts on that would be helpful.
Well, matters arising is not practice we would seek to follow, but given it's a relatively straightforward query, I mean, if the Commissioner wanted to respond to it now, or if the Commissioner wanted to pick that up under the office delivery update, which is later on the agenda.
Happy to respond now, Chair. There isn't any funding for that level of resourcing, and it's a national issue that we share with other small forces. You will know that we consider ourselves to have been the victim of an unfair funding formula nationally for many, many years. The reason why we've got that figure is because I asked the Chief to identify what good would look like if we had the resources, because I think it's information that you and the public need to have available to you, because I think when we get inspected and found to be wanting, people need to know the proper context of that. So in the Chief's opinion, we need 2.8, 2.9 police per 1,000. We only have 1.9. And the other reason I asked the Chief to do that work for all of us, so that we all know, is because for me, that will be part of the briefing for lobbying our 7 new MPs, because I want them to take the case to government on our behalf.
Thank you for that reply. That was helpful, and I too would like to see fairer funding for local authorities, and in this case with the police authority as well.
I think we were all absolutely on the same page there. There's no questions.
I'm glad they raised it.
Thank you. So, Councillor Mercer?
It's just a point of information. Page 9, it was stated that we were one of the few forces that did not have a deputy at the National Association of Police Crime panels this week. Somebody had done some research, and there were actually 22 that had a deputy, and I think that may have increased to 23 in Nottinghamshire, but certainly in 22-23, that's about half.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise there was a question there.
Did you want a response?
No, it was just...
Sorry.
It was just a point of
There
information.
are 43 commissioners, half of them have got deputies, and a good lot of the others are in the process of getting deputies. Okay.
Thank you. Eventful, normally not very well in a minute, so thank you for that.
Is the panel happy to approve?
So, yeah, after all, are we happy to approve the minutes? Yes, thank you for that. Brilliant, thank you. So, moving on to agenda item 6, the Northamptonshire Fire Rescue Service Fire Protection Activity. So I'd like to welcome and invite Scott Richards to present the report.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for asking me to come along. So what I'll be doing, so introduce myself, my name is Scott Richards, I'm the Head of Protection for the Northamptonshire Fire Service. So for a bit of clarity, what protection is the sort of built environment and the legislative activity of businesses, commercial enterprise, etc. So if you've ever heard the phrase prevention and protection, prevention is very much the home environment and the activity around person-centred. Ours is a lot more sort of building-centred, for want of a better way to look at it, if that makes sense. Some of you may have heard me talk before, so I can only apologise a second time for having to listen to me. But I am very passionate about the subject around protection, so if I go into more detail or you've got any questions that we can't fill off today, I'd be more than happy to talk your ear off for the next hours after this another opportunity. I've made that point clear, because we want to engage as many people as possible to understand how and what we do and the rationale behind it, and also gather more information of how we can improve it. So going through, the primary thing that fire protection departments have is something called a risk-based inspection programme. So we have a duty upon us to inspect premises. Now clearly, with around 25,000 premises in the county that fall under the fire safety order, it would be unreasonable to try and inspect every premises consistently. So what the legislation and our guidance say, and point all fire services to, is around that risk-based inspection process. So you're looking at premises where there may be catastrophic failure or catastrophic risk and serious harm to be realised. And what we've used is the national guidance around how to identify risk methodologies and how to identify more serious risks so that they get prioritised. And as I speak later, that doesn't mean that other premises aren't prioritised or covered, but this is to give you an understanding of where we actually focus the absolute, if that makes sense. So what we've also done is widen that, because what you've also got is areas where, whilst the legislation is very much centred around life safety, that doesn't mean to say there are other premises that have other societal impacts. So we have blended that to look at a wider risk, not just those dedicated to life safety. Now, historically we used to have a system where every premises would be on an inspection programme. Certain premises maybe every 7 years, some premises every 9. What that created was an unrealistic plan. What we wanted to make sure is that higher risk get focused. So what we developed that is into a 3-year plan. So every 3 years, that's when we focus on those. But again, that doesn't mean the other premises don't have some sort of regime to cover them. So moving on to the next slide, we've just reviewed the risk-based inspection programme, and it's again a 3-year plan. It's identified just under 1,500 premises for us to target. Now, again, what this is looking at is our known data. So we know about these premises, we've looked at the characteristics and factors that contribute to that potential catastrophic or severe consequence, and that's how we've identified those, including some, as I mentioned, some community impacts and societal impacts as well. So the next slide gives you a little bit of an overview of what they can encompass. So I won't labour each one, but premises that provide care and treatment. Think about this as hospitals, care homes, some hospices, premises where the occupants are heavily reliant on a third party to assist them to remove themselves or evacuate to a place of safety. Nationally, over the years, there's been a number of incidents, some very tragic, results, some which have been where they've had an incident. These things have been in place from a fire safety point of view, and people have been moved safely. They need to be that constant monitoring to ensure that those persons who are vulnerable in those positions are being looked after in the event of a fire. Blocks of flats over 3 stories, so 4 or more stories, we are focusing on in this regime. The reason why is because the nature of flats, and I obviously won't go into things like the Grenfell report and phase 2, but bear in mind that's all 18 metres or above. We've only got 11 premises that meet the categorisation for high rise, and they are in our inspection programme, but we have a lot of people between the 4 stories and 7 stories as well. So that's a focus in these next 3 years. Anywhere sleeping, so you've got hotels or boarding. The nature of sleeping, as you'll all appreciate, if you go somewhere unfamiliar and you go sleep, you wake up, it takes a little time to understand where you are, where you need to be, and it's also, it would be my recommendation any time you stay in a hotel, is once you get to your room, perhaps keep on walking and find out what's the other way down the corridor, because you might be 2 feet away from the next exit, but you always go by the way you came in. But we concentrate on blocks of flats, hotels, boarding, because of the nature of risk we see. Other areas is major entertainment, so large places of assembly. This goes into wider evacuation, and you will have seen reports such as the Manchester Arena, where crowded places. That's a developing risk, not only because of the number of people, which is something the fire safety legislation manages, but also the change in what evacuation, or potentially you may have heard the term evacuation, where actually you don't want to suddenly release people, you need to manage them in a smaller area rather than releasing out of exits. So we concentrate on those premises because of the number of people increases that risk. Schools with special educational needs is a premise which was highlighted in the very latest guidance that was issued last year by the National Fire Chiefs Council. We've done some previous work around those, and we continue to develop that work and revisit them to monitor the compliance level and the risk level within those types of premises. Clearly provides a societal risk in those. Historical risk of buildings. Now, you'll appreciate that Northamptonshire has a lot of premises that present that risk. Most of them don't present a life risk, but what we can do, from a protection point of view, is ensure that good management, good awareness of fire safety, good precautions, one, minimises the chance of a fire occurring, reduces the damage and the size of the fire, hopefully, if it does occur, helps then inform from my team that will go out and do the inspection, will also feed back into our operational intelligence, so our response can be improved or more advised, all of which hopefully then saves and protects the heritage within the county. Major national infrastructure, we do have a small number of those within this county, and again, the life risk is one element to that, but there's other wider factors that if we can control and manage that risk in any way we can. And then where we have operational response plans in place. This is where we have something called site-specific risk intelligence. So there are certain premises where we have very specific knowledge about them as an operational response because of the nature of the environment, chemicals they may store, processes they may have. We're inspecting those again, not necessarily from the life risk, but to minimise that risk for one being realised, but if it is, minimise the actual size or the damage from the fire. So, moving on. The impact of fire protection. So, again, fire protection is it happens, it's happening every day, the officers are out and about, but it's understanding what we can and can't do. Now, the first thing I will always say is that we've got a really good dedicated team. They're very knowledgeable, very experienced, and they will provide guidance and advice whenever available. We will always push guidance and advice because if someone's developing a new premises, developing a new business, we will always want to help them get it right first time. It's cheaper for the business and it's more effective from a fire protection point of view. We've developed our website significantly. We went from approximately 2,000 hits per year to over 20,000 hits per year. There's a free e-learning tool. So what I would say is there's no company in this county or anyone who can access the internet who can say we haven't done any fire safety training because it's too expensive. You can log onto our website and do a free e-learning package today. It's there, it's available for all. So we've removed that barrier to actually raise the basic awareness. We always try to take informal action wherever possible, where if there's a problem, we'll work with the person, work with the responsible person who owns, operates the building, explain what is required and understand and help them get to that resolution. There are some occasions, unfortunately, where people will just say no, or they will not want to comply, or the seriousness is so high that we have to take enforcement action. Where that is basically a notice we'll tell a responsible person this is what needs to be done and this is the timescale that must be done within. And the last, more severe power that we have is the prohibition restriction. Very commonly this relates to people who are sleeping in premises, where the risk can be so high if they would continue to sleep, there could be a risk of serious harm or death. And that's where we can issue a notice stopping people either sleeping on the premises or operating in a particular part of the premises. So that's the impact. Now what this shows you, this is some work we did, and this is a review of our impact around risk rating. So one is obviously from satisfactory and the grey bottom line is unsatisfactory. So they will clearly be opposite in that regard. But with care homes, what we've actually done, care homes have always been inspected every 3, 4, maybe 5 years at the utmost. So this graph goes back to 2010. So over that period of time, that's created the same, approximately 400 premises have each been inspected 3 or 4 times. So what that's showing you is over the years, the gradual increases. Now almost 90% of our audits around care homes show that there are satisfactory findings of the fire precautions. Whereas you look at 2010, it was sitting around 50%. What that is really hopefully assuring you is that re-inspection activity within those substance premises is continually trimming any minor non-conformance. We're going in, offering advice, and keeping that level of satisfactory fire precautions in place. And that trend obviously will never reach 100%, but it's a good target and it reinforces this is why we should be going back. What we wouldn't want to do is inspect them, not go back for say 10 years, and standards have gone down so far, we take a more formal action to bring the standards back up. We want to maintain those standards high. And the next slide is similar, shows a similar pattern, but for hotels. Slightly different, but again, the average line is sitting up towards 75% of satisfactory outcomes. There's 2 factors for that. Hotels are a little bit more dynamic, with new hotels coming in, and we're finding more hotels. Obviously, the tourism within this county sits high, certainly with certain sporting activities. So we're finding the non-conformance usually in premises we either didn't know about beforehand or fairly new. But either way, the trend is there that if we continually re-inspect them, that continually improves incrementally that safety. So that was the risk-based inspection programme, which I've explained. We also have other activities. So we've got something targeting risk management. So as it says there, that's around our unknown activities. Now there could be something new that we're unaware of. It could be a new piece of guidance that we had issued. It could be something where nationally we've seen a trend or an incident. It could be a one-off incident somewhere else in the country. What that allows us to do is take that and go, right, what is it telling us? How does that compare to our current model? Do we have a known or an unknown risk? We can go and investigate, and that gives us that ability to reassess, does that risk exist in Northamptonshire? Does current current processes safeguard us against that? Do we need to include it in the risk-based inspection programme going forward? And it can be as varied as we've done one around special educational needs, as I talked about earlier, when that was put in guidance. We've done another one around lithium ion, around scooters and the shops that store them, because we're getting the visibility of what that looks like from the lithium ion batteries point of view. What that allows us to do is be dynamic around the things we don't know, or we might want to know more of, if that makes sense. We've also got government grants, which is around what is classed as protection uplift grants, and we're using that part of that funding to employ 3 fire safety advisors. These are advisors coming in and they're going to be undertaking sampling activity and providing guidance and advice to the lower risk premises, so those outside of the risk-based inspection programme. They've been employed now since April and doing very well and getting out into the smaller businesses and giving that advice and guidance. And we're also moving towards getting more use and getting crews out and about to take them to what we class as fire safety checks. They are more hazard spotting activity. Clearly the competence required for a fire protection inspector is quite high, But what we can do is train our crews, and we've developed internal training to develop their understanding of fire protection so they can do more checks whilst out and about in commercial premises. The next slide just touches on housing multiple occupation, as I know it's been discussed previously with myself and on a previous panel. That's just to give you that outline where the Housing Act enforced by the local authorities is the primary legislation for housing multiple occupation. But I thought it would be useful for everyone to be aware that whilst they lead on it, we will always be there to assist. We work with the local authorities very well in regards to if there's new landlords who are developing a new property, if they've got something a little bit different and want a very specific fire safety solution, we'll work alongside them for that. If we've got premises which are more mixed use, so commercial, which is obviously our primary legislation, and the sleeping above that, we can work in there. We'll also be contacted around whilst they're licensing HMOs, the owners of or responsible persons for them. They will check with us if we have any prior knowledge or informal enforcement with regards to them. So it helps maintain that suitability of the landlords. Any time of day, 24/7, there is a fire protection officer on duty, and quite often if we get the incident or report late at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, we can respond, we can take that formal action. The next morning, we will always then have the conversation with the local authority around who's going to take that privacy moving forward for improving the standards. And if there's any local initiatives or there's activity where we've received data or information, we will always again work alongside them around that housing multiple occupation to address that known risk. And lastly, it's around, this was just to give you a bit of awareness around developing risk that we're noticing. So I graduated in, so think about hotels, they're very easy to identify mostly. They're a registered business, you can Google them, find them, it's very quick and easy. Your self-catering accommodation, again, is very broadly identifiable, we can find that. Bed and breakfast, you can imagine for this county, we have some that operate for 1 weekend in a year, and others that might operate all year round. But what we're noticing is around hosting sites, and I won't obviously name brand names of them, but you'll be aware of them, where people can put their properties up and you can rent them for short periods, etc. That's not as easy to find, because if you've ever been on them, you might have to pay a deposit to find out exactly the address of them. So that can be a little bit difficult sometimes for them. And also the mechanism. Now, National Fire Chiefs Council have done some really good work with some of the main entrepreneurs for these, and actually provided guidance for those to operate them. But it does sit as that little bit of an area, well, where are they and what are they operating? So that's an area that what we're developing is that ability to track and look into those a little bit more. So that's just for awareness, just to give that understanding of that broad brush that we apply with protection. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you for that. That's very useful. I think one of the items you mentioned is public buildings. Of course, we've got Martinsville, which is now moving forward. I've been watching that very closely, so I'm sure we'll be working closely with you. It's just working out how that's going to be the delivery of that legislation, and we as councils of West and North, of course, have got larger venues, but yeah, I'm watching that with interest.
Yes, so we're getting that view ahead of that, and because obviously it links in with tiers of different premises numbers, which is what our legislation determines, we've already started that work to try and help that categorisation. So when someone says, right, can you give me all the premises with this amount of people, we'll start supplying that data very readily.
Absolutely, I think eyes are going to be on to you, other people who think, what are we going to do, who do we talk to? So thank you. So over to the panel. So obviously we're here to scrutinise the Commissioner's office, so how we ask our questions, I'm sure you're familiar. So our newest member first then, so Andy Frost, and then followed by Dr. Cust.
Hi Scott, thanks very much. That was very informative, and you clearly got a good handle on what you're doing. But anybody in your sort of role is going to have sleepless nights over something. What area of the business that you're responsible for gives you the most sleepless nights, and what can be done to help you sleep at night?
Wow, there's a question. I think for myself, it's the unknown around what is being discussed. So if I use an example, I'm not going into the detail, but around sort of Grenfell, it triggered a lot of investigation. And then I think, what it will trigger when it looks at the external wall coverings of buildings, and it's put that to test to everyone in the fire sector. Do you know what you thought you knew it? And the guidance said you knew it, but actually now we didn't. Right. And that's developing. And I think It doesn't necessarily give me sleepless nights, but it does make me wake up at 2 thinking, right, let's do that now in case we can help us in 4 years' time when that does come to fruition. And that's where that TRM comes in, where we've gone, you know, I wasn't really happy. We used to group buildings, like flats nationally, are grouped between, say, 6 to 9 floors. We've got rid of all that, so it's 6 floors, 7 floors, 8 floors, because we know at some point we want to get to that level of detail.
Okay. Can I just ask one other question?
Please, yeah.
With the work between fire and rescue service and the police, you've got about 1,500 extra eyes and ears to help with the fire prevention and protection. Is there any training, any liaison between yourselves and the frontline police officers of what to look out for, how to make a referral to you if they see premises that they're worried about?
We haven't done anything specifically to the police force as a whole, and it's a very good point. We can do that awareness session. But we have worked closely with officers within the licensing department who are going in and out of premises that are commercial. We've also done that with the crime prevention design advisors who are looking at plans for the development of sites and new buildings, and they can refer things into us. But it's something I can go away and look at to raise that hazard identification and awareness.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I come in on that point, just on another related area?
Please.
Apologies. So, Johnny, apologies I'm late as well. I'm Chief Executive at the OPFCC, and the M1 and accidents on there were against me this afternoon. Just to mention that on police and fire working together to understand vulnerabilities, the Chief Constable takes the chair of the Safeguarding Adults Board from this year and is looking to bring the fire chief into that equation too, to look at sharing information about at-risk people. So in cases of hoarding or what have you, with the fire risk and safety risks sit alongside each other, that should be another good opportunity for joint working. Thanks.
I think it's fair to say there's a lot of joint working already, in particular at high-rise, as you've already mentioned. So, any Dr. Custer?
Thank you. You've kind of led into what I was going to say. So enjoyed the presentation, Scott. But I was just thinking about that kind of joined up way of thinking, because you're going in the buildings. So what are you seeing? What are you sharing in terms of data? Do your staff have training in safeguarding, looking at red flags? I know in the job that I do that adults at risk of exploitation, the environment plays a key function. And if you're going in and seeing things that are potentially coercive, controlling behaviour, who are you sharing that data with? How are you getting that data through? So it's just thinking about if your staff have seen the red flags and are able to link into sort of community safety boards, adult safety board, just linking that in would be helpful to know if that's happening.
Yeah, again, very good point to raise, and what we have in our officers a diversity of training in regards to just general health and safety, where we might refer into the HSE or the local authority environmental health. We've done work with private sector housing around HMOs to understand what the wider requirements outside of fire safety of HMOs are. We've done work and costs we've presented and they've to us the Care Quality Commission, which gives us an understanding around the care within care homes, hospitals, so we can identify failures that may be outside of fire. We've done work with the Gang Master Licensing Authority some years ago around where we look at exploitation and modern day slavery. We have safeguarding training which is standard but also additional to identify gang affiliation. Use of terrorism, around ACT and awareness. So we do a range of that sort of awareness, as you say. So once they're in there, we're very often, we'll find if there is something that's there, we will be able to identify the agency and then already have previous contact to pass that information over.
Thank you. Just to follow up, I'm glad to hear that, and I think the safeguarding training is important because I'll tell you now, because I chair a safeguarding board for Birmingham City, I'm telling you now the human trafficking element is going through the roof at the minute, and particularly in the environment. So anything that we can do and that you can see organisationally that you think that's not right, there's a red flag there, is great, it really is helpful. So I'm pleased to hear you doing that, so thank you for confirming that.
The Commissioner wants to come in there as well, please.
I just wanted to make one other point. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for the questions. They've been really useful. Councillors have got a role as well in sending out red flags, and I know, you know, we're going to be all of us campaigning a lot in the next few months, knocking on lots and lots of doors, looking at the local elections in May. I think it would be a good idea, Chair, to remind councillors that they can inform the fire service of any concerns that they pick up while they're out and about in their ward or when they're out and about campaigning. It's certainly something I did because I own the town centre, one of the town centre councils until May when I'll be standing down. But I picked up 35 concerns which the fire service very kindly looked at for me. So I think it would be quite a nice thing to do to remind councillors that they're able to do that too.
I think councillors are, certainly all the councillors I work with, which is most of them, that's all of them, in one way or another. And I think they're very sensitive to that, but certainly it's for any one of us to remind our co-councillors on that and to support them where they may need some support. So moving on to Councillor Maxwell.
My question relates to Kettering General Hospital. As you're aware, we've lost the £46 million that we were due to get to sort out the RAC and also other issues at the hospital. What exactly are you going to do about the risk factor of patients having to walk across the car park from one place, having had a baby, or in one place to another place?
I think Councillor Maxwell, I think that's
can
not
I
really...
just finish off here?
Go on.
So the risk is, what is happening about how we're going to rectify the problems at Kettering General Hospital in order to safeguard people who use it?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So obviously there's elements of that I can and can't explain, and I don't have all the details specifically. What I can say is with all both Kettering General, Northamptonshire General and other premises, we always work very hard with the estates group, and we have made, without no detail, some very, very specific parts of premises much safer to allow continued use with a very high level of management and processing, rather than taking away what could be a societal loss if we suddenly take wards away. I can't obviously solve some of those issues that you're referring to, but what we will do, as always do, is provide that assistance to the estates group to make the building not only usable, but always safe, as reasonably practicable. I'm not sure if that answers it.
Yeah. I've got another question. So my second question is, you're talking about HMOs. One of the issues is, for instance, in Thrapston, is that you have a lot of people sleeping like 24 in one house. Now, you wouldn't necessarily know that unless somebody obviously told you, but it is on the increase. There are a lot of houses where people jump into bed or jump out of bed and so forth, but you've got no idea how many people are actually in there, and there doesn't seem to be some register in order to actually acknowledge what is actually going on in some houses.
So with regards to the house multiple occupation, it's always difficult because what you have are those who want to comply and will undertake the licence application, they'll fill everything out, and then you will have that sort of other area where people, you could say, just don't want to comply or have no regard for compliance in that respect. Now, there's a number of different areas there. One is we will always respond to information. If someone raises concerns or issues or around house sleeping, etc., I've talked about our responsibility. And our powers of entry do extend quite extensively to get into premises in that regard. So if we had that information, we will always go in to undertake that assessment and do what we can in regards to the fire safety with our powers that are provided. The elements around where you've got the excessive number of people, again, it falls within that, whether that's a HMO, people in what we see now is industrial units, because it's cheaper for staff to sleep in an industrial unit and not have a home because of the way that the cost of living has affected them. If that's in people who have a shop and members of staff who are being exploited, we will always respond and take that action to make it safe. The visibility of the register is, you're talking about potentially people who just don't want to be on any visibility. And we will always then work with the occupants, the people at risk who really haven't done anything wrong. They're looking either because it's what they can afford or it's where they've been placed, which is more concerning. And we will always try and work with those with other agencies to make them safer.
I have one more question.
Well, I'm mindful of time today.
Yeah,
we are keeping to our timings.
Is the scooters actually, which aren't legal?
That's not going to be. That's not a question. If we go down the scooter track, we're going to let's leave it there. We'll move on to Councillor Wren.
Yeah, thank you. Interestingly, that you say about unregistered HMOs, because that again can fall down to ward councillors. knowing, having eyes and ears everywhere. I've reported 3 cases in my ward that turned out to be modern slavery. So again, you know, as councillors, we've got a significant role to play, and and the police, fire, and council acted very swiftly. So I agree with what you say. My concern is we have a lot of warehouse fires that we've seen significantly increase over the recent years, and we seem to have. And sitting on planning, I was really concerned that they don't have to have fire sprinklers. That's down to them, and I think that is a significant law that should be looked at. I know that's not down to you, but I think that's something that needs to be changed. And I don't know if you agree with me, but I think sprinklers in buildings like that. But derelict buildings is another real concern to me, and we see significant more and more of them around. We're getting more fires, we're getting children going in there, playing there, doing all sorts in there, falling through roofs, and again, I don't know how, we've got a few council buildings that have security going around there, but I report to the council. Do I report it to the council, or should I report it to the fire service?
With regards to warehouses, it may not be an increase in the warehouse, but there's more visibility of those fires. You're right that the thresholds, there is a threshold, but it's not a mandatory law to have sprinklers. I would always say sprinklers would be fantastic everywhere, but there's that balance against that of risk, but we would always endorse those from our position statement. And regards to the derelict buildings, if we as Fire Protection can't manage them because of the nature of the premises they're unoccupied, we work closely with the police crime prevention team. We have an arson task force, which is a joint team. If we can't do it from that point of view, we would always work with those to assist where we can to reduce that risk.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Yes, Scott, that was a really good report. I found it very interesting. Something you said about developing risks. Sorry, I do beg your pardon. About developing risks, and you mentioned batteries, presumably lithium-ion batteries are the ones that go in cars. And I think we're all aware of the fact that they pose a different risk, let's say. And guess where we put these cars? We put them in the basement of most buildings. And I wondered if you've got enough about you to be discussing that and thinking about that for the future.
So there's national conversations around lithium-ion batteries, and it's one of those areas that commercially and ownership has fast accelerated guidance and legislation. Now, you will find lithium-ion batteries statistically are very safe as a device, very safe. We're still seeing more fires from standard internal combustion engines than we do from lithium-ion cars specifically. There's higher awareness, and again, the potential from when these occur, the ability for media to make them look like it's more frequent because you see more of them, if that makes sense. And it is that comparison with what the legislation and guidance for design of buildings can achieve, and it is there versus still bear in mind that if you have a lithium-ion car battery fire, there is a potential risk. You could be parked next to something that has 60 litres of highly flammable liquid next to it. When you compare it in that way, that's not meant to be flippant, it's the nature of any vehicles and what the potential they can create in any environment.
Well, if I may, Chair, just very quickly, presumably in a conversation with the developers of a new block building that's going to house people, this sort of thing will be taken into consideration?
If it's outside of the guidance, we would have a conversation, we'll discuss it, and ideally cars would be parked outside in open air car parks, 10 metres away from every building, but it's what the nature of the guidance will allow, that we can't step outside because it is national. We'll try and influence, and we always will try and influence activity, be that electric vehicles or bin storage on a site near flats. We will always try and reduce that risk, but we are confined with what we can actually ask for.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bin storage and high-lows, there's a whole subject which we won't go on to now. But, final question then from Councillor Clark.
Yes, it sort of follows on from that question. Of course, sadly, we're all very much aware of the threat from exploding personal mobile devices. So will you be reassessing your risks in light of these recent events?
think that's a bit of a, that's probably the best left alone until we understand it a bit more. I think, as I said last night, the more we know, the more I know, the less I understand, and the less I've done that with. So, brilliant, thank you. So, I don't know if you want to sort of wrap up, or got anything else you want to add to your?
No, thank you very much for letting me come along and explain all that. And again, I'm happy to chew your ear off for hours independently and talk about whatever you like in that regard. Or if you just want some education around hazard spotting yourselves, so when you're out and about, you can do that and give that. More than happy to put on whatever you need.
Good. I think that might be a members, elected members session for both the North and the West. I think that'd be a really good one. So I think that hopefully you won't regret offering that. Never. Brilliant, Scott. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
So moving on then to agenda item 7, and I'm going to invite the ministers to introduce the item.
I'm going to ask the 151 officer to introduce this item. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
This is Anne Button, who you met before. She's the chair of the Joint Independent Audit Committee, and she's going to present her report to you today.
Thank you very well.
Thank you. Hello, I'm sure some of you recognise me, if not all. So the report I present now is the annual report, and this is for 23-24, so the year up to the 24th of March. I don't plan to go through the whole report, but I'll take the main points. So the GIAC is there to give assurance to the FCC, and we meet 4 times a year, and we have workshops on any subjects where we feel that we need more information or there's a greater risk or anything that's cropped up. We do now have all 5 members, which is good, and we recently appointed, she started in March, a lady who has significant IT and cyber security and network experience. So I think the committee now, we feel that we've got a broad representation with IT, financial, estates, knowledge, and in-depth knowledge for a number of years. So we receive regular reports at each of the meetings, and we look at any areas, so things like updates on inspectorate reports, so HMIC, FRS, obviously audit accounts, and risk management, risk registers, updates on treasury management, audit plans, etc. Please report that the risks we've been seeing around external audit, though they still exist and we're still behind on audit, government has finally published the plan on deadline dates to get all our audits sorted, and we have now got new auditors for both fire and police, the same auditors in Grant Thornton. Things are going well, and the relationships are much better than the previous auditors, and we're hopeful that we will get all the audits signed and sorted within the government deadline. It might mean that they're not the unqualified audits we wanted before, but that is not anything down to the Office of the OPCC or the officers. It's simply down to where we were with delays and backlogs. There will obviously be increased fees, I think, going forward, but these have been budgeted for, and we're quite happy that they're in the financial plan. So that's a real area of progress, I think. The other areas we've looked at have been the future systems and the enabling systems, where now police and fire are sharing systems on joint platforms, and that again has gone really well. We've looked at the benefits realisation and the outcomes, and I think savings have been assured, but the actual process of it has gone very well, and it's you know, it helps grid working when people are all on the same systems. Obviously IT, cybersecurity, workshop on governance structures, especially in the light of recent changes to managements and things, to get assurance that there was plenty of depth in the management team and how things were going to work across all of the organisations. So I think, unless, well, I'm happy to take any questions, but I do feel that we have moved forward. Oh, I perhaps should mention internal audit as well. We now have the same internal auditors for police and fire as well. So that really helps, I think. So we feel as a committee that while there's always risks, certainly some of the more recent risks have diminished and progress has been made. So happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that report. Very, very interesting piece. So, Dr. Cuss, followed by Mr. Frost. So, brain failed now. So, Andy, apologies, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that report. It's really helpful to read through. A couple of questions I'm just trying to understand. So from the audit committee, do you pick up things like sort of if there's something externally that's say out in the press or something out there that's not right, or you know there's a concern raised? So I'll give you an example. I just found out that Northamptonshire police are the second worst in the country for strip searching children. Now, that's a real worry. So would that be something that would say, I don't know if the commission, but would that be something that would the committee would put into their kind of what they look at in terms of organisational effectiveness? Just a question. Maybe I'm asking the wrong person.
It's not a question for audit, that's...
Right, okay. That's why I just wanted to, that's what I was asking.
No,
What
audit will look at the finances.
Just the finances.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
We also look at risk registers.
That's
So
what I'm
if
saying.
it was something significant
Yeah.
to appear
Yeah.
as a rising risk
Yeah.
or an escalated
Yeah.
risk or a high risk,
Yeah.
then it would be looked at as part of the risk
Yeah.
register. And what we look
Yeah.
at is what is the plan of action
Yeah.
to mitigate the risk, and is that happening, and what's the time frame? So that's, for us, it's about have you recognised the risk,
Right.
and what is the plan,
That's
and
helpful.
is that plan being
So that would be
effective?
something that would go into a risk register
Yeah.
then, and you would, from a committee perspective, you could have a
We
look at
would
that
look
risk
at that,
register.
yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Just wanted to check where that's going to, and I'm sure that's been picked up. I just want to check that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think revisit that and bring that up again another time as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Andy.
Yeah, I just noticed about the, and having sat on DRAG for a number of years, I should know this answer, but I don't. So you talk about the police accounts not being signed off or unaudited for 21, 22, 22, 23. When would you have expected them to have been audited?
Right, well in the, some years ago, previously, audited accounts would be produced about July and signed off about September.
Yeah,
For the year before?
Yeah, for the year before, yeah.
Yeah, the regulatory deadline is the end of September.
Okay.
And the finance team did everything they possibly could to try and influence that, but we're at the hands of the auditor, which didn't have the resources to do it for us.
Okay. So the follow-up then for Danielle is, or do I call you Commissioner? I'm not quite sure. Danielle, are you happy that there is nothing in those two unaudited that you don't know about that might catch you out with your financial planning?
Yeah, can I just
Sorry.
come in there? So the accounts have been produced for all of those years, and they come to JIAC, and we look at them, go through them in very fine detail. But the bit that hasn't been done in time is the external auditors giving their view. So and there's two financial, I mean, I'm a qualified accountant, there's another one as well on the committee. So we look at them in depth as a set of accounts, and we've been happy, and they've been produced in time. It's the external audit work that we're waiting for.
Okay, thank you.
And to be honest, Chair, that's a national problem with those particular auditors, as you will know from WNC and Northamptonshire as well. They were the preferred auditors recommended by government, and unfortunately they took on too much work and didn't have the capacity.
We all are feeling the pain. So, Councillor Maxwell.
I have two questions. The first one in number 10, assessment of external audit. You've got external auditors until 27-28. What happens to 25 and 26?
I know. Sorry. They're appointed on a contract for 3 years, so every year, so it's up to 27-28. So Grant Thornton are now on site auditing 22-23, and they will continue to be auditors up until 27-28 when the contract is re-tendered.
My second question is, what is the cost of this independent audit?
Well, there's a separate cost, perhaps pass it up to all, but there is a separate cost via OPCC and the Chief Constable.
Do you mean the cost of the external audit itself or the cost of the JIAC?
The actual audit itself.
Audit itself?
Yeah.
So that's negotiated via the PSAA, which is the national body that negotiates all the contracts for external audit, and we get given a scaled fee that we have to pay for each organisation. In total, it's over £150,000 for an audit for a year. Exceptional amount of money. The cost of audit has gone up exceptionally for 23-24 compared to previously by over 150%, in fact. But it is what it is, and we enter all the consultations to feed back on the fees. And if there are any fee variations, we do push back via PSAA to make sure that the external auditors are held to account for any increases in fees.
It would be quite useful actually to see that now in the
It's included in the statutory accounts.
Right, okay.
There's a specific note within the statutory accounts. We have to report on it. We can
Yeah, I'm happy
clarify
to add that to the report for the future.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point is that we do not appoint, as an organisation, we do not appoint the auditors, as Paul said. They're appointed by the public sector audit. And we are, and that has been a large part of the problem, because we could not extract performances from the auditors, because we're not the ones letting the contract. So it's a particular government, the way it works with government. And again, whilst they have a consultation on the fees, and we can certainly put an input to their consultation, you know, they will set a fee that they want to set.
And the acronyms which you seem to repeat, if you're not familiar with them, it's difficult. It would actually be quite useful if you just put what actually they mean, because not everybody, well, I would say from my point of view, like CCAB, what exactly is that? You know, I just think we need to have some sort of, at the end, what in fact these different acronyms mean.
Okay, I'll take that on board. Usually we put them in for once and then have the acronym after that. We'll check that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think, as I say, the pain of audit fees is being felt by many organisations. So on to Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. With your experience in the auditing process, is there anything that you feel that could be improved in this year's audit process that you know that you've actually learned from the previous issues that you've actually looked at?
There is one particular area, and we have raised it with the new auditors, and we've fallen foul in the past of expert differences. So, for example, valuation of estates is very difficult, and we have a company that will value the estates, a bit like a pension, like renting, like pensions. But the auditors themselves will look at it, but they also have somebody who will value the estate. So we ended up in quite a difficult position where our experts said one thing and their experts said the other. And actually, the auditors wouldn't come back and say where the differences were. They just said, well, we think you should revalue or relook at it. And of course, you're trying to value, place a value on something which you won't know the value until you actually want to sell it. So, and it costs a lot of fees, and external work obviously adds to fees and adds to fees. So I think we'll all agree that was a difficult area. We have already raised that with the new auditors to see if we can either, I think what they need to do is set a
we've got our experts who are fully qualified and have very clear rationale say one thing, and we're really happy with it. And then the auditors, experts who are also fully qualified and very confident in their assumptions have a different view. It's very difficult to reach an agreement because everybody's quite stubbornly, sticking by their way of doing things. But we've got some assurance from the new auditors that their approach is a little bit more flexible and kind of pragmatic, while still being robust. So we look forward to seeing what that will come out with when they finish the audit in the coming weeks.
Lovely, thank you for that. So the panel notes that report and from the Joint Independent Audit Committee, which I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to agenda item 8. So I'd like the Commissioner to introduce their report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to pick out just 3 items to talk about, but of course I welcome questions on anything that the panel might be interested in the report. I hope you all received it in time. Have a good read. So the first thing I wanted to mention was the production. I have to produce a 5-year police fire and crime plan. I want it to be different to what we've done before in the county. So we want to have a look at an integrated way in the way the police and the fire keep us safe. So it's going to be a public safety plan. We've got a working title, which I think I quite like, which I'll probably keep, which is called Safe and Sound. So safe is about our ambition to keep all of us safe, and sound is about the ethical nature by which we're going to be working to keep us all safe. So I hope that finds favour with you. The way that the document is being produced is that we have chosen 3 broad areas to be the priorities in the plan. So one is violence against women and girls, one is looking at the needs of young people, and one is the criminal justice system. So I'll just quickly tell you how we've approached that. We've done it through workshop-style meetings where we've called the experts in those particular fields together, and we've asked them to tell us about what they think has been going well, what hasn't been going well, and what needs to be done in the future. And then all that information is being collated. So we welcome anybody's point of view and collaboration on this. There's going to be a draft document produced by December which will go out for public consultation, and I hope that we get lots of feedback from that. And what we're hoping is that the plan, which will be entirely deliverable, I hope, will have behind it a series of action plans. So it will be a strategic document, but underneath that there will be lots of action plans. And it will be designed to support the police plan and the fire plan. So you won't be looking at 3 unlinked documents. We want them all to have synergy. So we're focusing on 3 overarching missions, if you like. We want visible and accessible community services. So part of that mission, you'll have noticed, I hope, that I've been doing a huge amount of work with the police and fire service to bring them closer and closer and ever closer to the community, because I think that's what my job is. That's what my job is. We want to focus very, very much on professionalism and standards in everything that we do. So we know part of that is about culture change in the police and culture change in fire. And I'm very, very happy, I have to say, with all the colleagues I'm working with in the police and in the fire service who are really up for creating that culture of inclusion and welcome in both those services. So within the workforce, but as well in our engagement with the community. So I'm really, really happy about that. And then we want to be building stronger systems so that our systems talk to each other, that there's no wastage, and we can work with economies of scale. So if I leave that one there, do you want me to stop and have questions on each bit? items I'm going to raise is on the vetting review and community engagement. Do you want me to stop after each?
I think we stop there. So
Okay.
I think there's huge interest already, so we should short pause session. So Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. You've mentioned the 3 points that you want to actually maintain and also concentrate on. What about burglary, shoplifting, murder, assaults and fraud? You haven't covered any of those.
Those are clearly public safety issues, and of course they will be included. I'm talking about the really big headlines. So you'll be aware that recently we've been doing a huge amount of work on retail crime in the county, and it's had a really big impact. So I've been doing walkabouts with the chief, you'll be aware of that, and we've been talking on those walkabouts with retailers and finding out exactly from them what's going on and what some of the solutions might be. So we've done those walkabouts in Corby, in Northampton, in Brackley, in Daventry. We've still got places to go like Wellingborough and Catterick, but we will be doing that, and of course it's really, really important for me.
I'll just come in there on retail crime. So as you probably know, my professional background is in that. Just slightly off the top, not on topic, but not so much for this meeting, but you've got your retail summit planned, I think for next week, which I think neither myself nor Councillor Rowley can attend. And I think, bearing in mind my previous input and my background, I think it would maybe have a rethink on the timings on that, because I think it would be unfortunate if myself and Councillor Rowley couldn't attend. But moving on. Did you get your?
Can I just clarify, Chair, that what we're doing with the plan is that I want it to be a strategic document, but I've made it really clear that underneath that there'll be lots of operational action plans underneath it, and that will address all those different items, Councillor Pritchard.
But what happens in between? I see that obviously I've got a copy of the existing commissioner or the previous commissioner's fire and crime plan. What happens to that? Does that carry on until you produce yours, or what?
Of course, and we discussed that at the last meeting, didn't we?
We did actually touch on, yes we did. So Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, and thank you, Danielle. You've actually answered one of my questions of whether you've been to the north. She said you've been to Corby and you plan to come to, perhaps that was...
I met you in the lobby of the Cube, Councillor Mercer.
Yeah, that wasn't a walkabout, that was it was a meeting. So I'm really pleased that you are, going across the whole community, and you mentioned closer to the community when you were speaking, and that, I think, as you know, the public, what they want to see is more visible policing. So I just wondered how were you working with would you be meeting with other, say, town councils or other sort of organisations closer to the ground? I know certainly the previous commission used to have meetings with the town councillors and to hear their feedback of what was happening on the ground. I just wondered if you've got any plans in that area.
I have already had a meeting with all the parish town councillor police liaison officers, and it is something that I'm really keen on maintaining throughout my term of office, and they will be regular agenda items.
Thank you. So then I've got, just so we know, I'm ready order, so Councillor Maxwell, Dr. Cuss, Councillor Hanslow and Councillor Reynolds. So Councillor Maxwell.
Were you looking at the vetting review section at the moment?
In a minute.
In a minute,
after
right.
this section.
Yeah. Just quickly on the business of you actually going around and seeing councils about their individual, so parish councils, about their individual concerns about the police. I was at a meeting at Woodford on Tuesday, and they said they haven't been contacted. So is that correct or not correct?
They have been contacted. They've been contacted by me personally, but they've also been contacted through Dan Moody, who is the person who coordinates all the activities for the parish council.
Can I just... Well, actually, actually, I think it's better because Daniel Moody doesn't actually have any say over how the parish councils work. And I think that I got the impression from Woodford on Tuesday that they would like to have something more relevant, but at the moment they said on Tuesday they'd had nothing. So whether you'd actually contacted the chairman of Woodford, I don't know.
We'll take this one off. I'm sure Danielle will more than take on that, because she knows my driver of parishes as well from the west, and so I'm sure that will be looked at. Thank you. So Dr. Cuss, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Couple of things. I like the safe and sound. I think the simpler the better. I've got lots of splashes myself, so I know that. A couple of things from me just to think about is I look forward to your draft document, I really do, and I will feed back on that. But I'd like to think about, particularly for the communities, like a plan on a page and doing some we will statements. So we will do, so that you can get that real engagement with the communities. So that would be a plea, really, because I think you would get that engagement. I am looking forward to it. And the other plea is looking at your performance. I'm really pleased to see how well it's done. So I'm hoping that we don't lose sight of some of this as well, and that it probably will be embedded in your strategic plan. But your performance is this quarter is showing a real positive way forward and really positive for Northamptonshire. So yeah, it would be really helpful to see that and the engagement with the citizens. And I like the idea, I must say, of focusing on core themes and smaller themes, because otherwise you'll try and do everything for everybody and it'll not work. So yeah, I'm looking forward to receiving this document. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Ponsford.
Yes, thank you. My first time to this meeting, I find it fascinating, and I'd like just to say the same actually as Dr. Cuss has said, that I'm looking forward to reading it. I just wanted to talk about what Wellingborough is doing. The town council there, I don't know if you've heard, it's got something called WARS, I'm not sure if that's a really good name, but it's Wellingborough Antisocial Behaviour Reporting, and that is to do with the town centre, it's to do with crime in shops. And so the town council there are working alongside this, it's not the police as such, but feeding in, enabling shops to report on things that are happening and not feeling that when they report to the police it won't go anywhere. That we're building up a real picture of what's happening in Wellingborough, because people are more prepared to report what's happening, not thinking that, you know, it's the police won't come out or whatever. So I just wanted to flag that up. I don't know whether you've heard of it.
I haven't heard of that particular name, but I do know of the retail plus police initiatives that are going on.
Retail crime initiative?
Yes. Retail crime initiative. Yes, so in Northampton we've got retail adopt a cop scheme going on, and you know, we will get round to Wellingborough as soon as we can actually. It is in my diary.
I'm sure it was.
And there is some good work going on in policing already, and some very specific work over in the north of the county on that, so targeting, hard targeting. So I think, again, something which I think the panel may want to, that could be a whole different subject, which should really maybe come into the retail summit. But thank you for that. So Councillor Randall, please.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's been good, it's great really that you're out and about, because that's what people like. They like to know who you are and what you're doing, and they can stop and speak to you in the street. Daventry has always been the forgotten town, even though we're the second largest town in West Northamptonshire. So it was really great that you've been over to Daventry. You've had the walk around with our ranger that, you know, that we paid for, because we used to have 6 PCSOs, and through the cuts that got cut down to 1. So we, as a town council, you know, we've got our ranger. We did have our PCSO, but as things are increasing, we put our money into youth service instead. You know, so really grateful, and it was lovely to see you out and about, real positive feedback. Retail crime is increasing, as we know, and I get really frustrated that the bigger organisations aren't even bothering to report it. It's almost like, well, you know, it's only a few £1,000 and, you know, we can accept that. It's just the encouragement that to get them to report it. I know that we've got teams specifically working on that, and our local Tesco had a group in last week. I think they completely cleared the shelves of razors, and but they didn't report it in. You know, later on a police officer come in and a member of staff said, you know, we've had these in, did you report it? No, we didn't. What did they look like? Were they wearing this? Yeah, they would have been this group that we're, you know, after and targeting. So, you know, again, as councillors, I suppose it's just for us to encourage retailers to make sure that they are reported in, and just an easy way of reporting, really. But, yeah, well done.
I'll just come in on that. Sorry, I keep going back to this summit, but I think when that comes together, I think an invite to senior head loss prevention, or you know, as senior members as possible for many of the retailers, because in order for our communities to be safer, there is, you know, they are present in all of our communities, these retailers, and they've got their part to play. I'm not saying they're not playing their part, but I think we need a reassurance and an update from West Northamptonshire and North Northamptonshire as to how we're feeling, because change of thought, change the feeling sometimes. But they've got a key part to play, I think, in addressing those challenges, because it's not just what happens in the shop, it's what then goes on after that. So, sorry, you can see I've got a bit of my bonnet on this, apologies. So, Andy.
Yeah, I really welcome the approach to this. This seems to be all inclusive, and the power in the county, I think, is the willingness of partners to get together. But I think quite often partners are left out. Really pleased to see that police, fire and yourselves are going to be working together, because I do think the Commissioner's office has a role in adding that value to support the police and fire to deliver a safer community, which is what we're all here to help you do, hopefully. I suppose I don't need these questions answering, but just things to think about is how are you going to baseline where we are now with a lot of these things you're talking about, and how are we going to measure successful outcomes. And I've always at the back of my head got, it's great, hitting the target, missing the point is one of my favourite phrases, because I'm not for all loads of targets, but I do know you've got HMIC in the background and HMIC fire in the background saying, what about this? So I suppose it's the balancing act between how you deliver what's right for the county and keeping HMIC off your door, because that will cause you more of a headache probably than some of the other stuff.
I'd love to come back in on that. I was going to come back on Dr. Cass's raising performance measures as well. It's something I'm asked all the time. It's a really tricky one, because from where I'm standing, I want the reporting of crime to go up. We've got a massive amount of under-reporting. We've just heard about retail crime. I want crime figures for retail crime to go up. I want crime figures for reported rapes to go up. So there is going to be an issue, isn't there? You know, the more comfortable women feel about the criminal justice system, the more reporting there will be. The more effective our policing and our neighbourhood patrols are, the more effective, the more likely retailers are to report crime. So when we're doing our best job, those figures are going to go up. The biggest measure for me is going to be this. My office has undertaken a huge amount of work with groups all over the county, asking them about how their levels of confidence and trust in policing. And let me tell you that it doesn't matter what the demographic is. It doesn't matter whether it's urban or rural. It doesn't matter whether it's a town council or a parish council. The answers were low. Trust and confidence is low. We can't have that. We just absolutely cannot have that. So a measure for me of the success of the work that we all do, so police, the fire, my office, all our partners do, is about whether we have helped communities feel more supported, and whether they feel safer, and we've got increased confidence in policing. And I take that really seriously. So I think that big conversation that's been had is giving me the benchmark from which to judge the success of my term of office. And I know that the police force is absolutely solidly with me on working close to the ground with our communities, within neighbourhoods, to grow that level of trust and confidence in policing. And of course, fire already does enjoy quite a good level of policing, but even with fire, that confidence has been knocked somewhat because of Grenfell. So there's still work to do, it seems to be, bringing the fire service out of the fire station into communities and making them more visible as well. And it's work that I'm going to really enjoy doing, I have to say, because it's really, really important. I don't want to go into any more schools and ask young people what their first priority is and hear from them that they want to feel safe. I want them to be safe, and I want them to feel safe.
So can I just ask a question on procedure? So will we comment on your draft plan?
Yes.
Is there going to be a workshop that we'll be involved in to discuss it? Or have you got the outline structure of what you want to build, and then we'll comment on the draft? I'm not quite sure of how it's going forward.
We're building the draft now, and the draft will be available in December. If this panel wants to have a workshop on it, I'd be very delighted. I love workshops, me. I'm a teacher. I like things like that. I'd be very happy to do that.
Thank you. So you touched on fire. On response times, that was something that you were very focused on, 5-minute response, wasn't it? So are we an update on that?
We are undertaking, the fire service is undertaking an emergency cover review at the moment, and that is going to help us understand where our resources need to be to produce the most effective response time. So if I give you not a very welcome figure, there was a house fire in Deanshair recently, and the response time was 17 minutes because of the location of the on-call fire stations. So we do need to look at that. We will look at that. The 5-minute response times is about critical incidences, you know. I won't expect people to have a 5-minute response time if they're getting a cat out the tree or cutting a ring off somebody's finger. That's about, you know, these really critical incidences where it's a matter of life and death when you get there.
Thank you. Just on that feeling safe, I mean, something we saw in one of our community safety partnership meetings, I think you're aware of this one, is I think it's really for members to be aware of, but it's the environment for graffiti and other things. It's one of the things that was really high up there, people not feeling safe. So that's something for us as councillors to focus on in order for us as the critical friend of the Commissioner, in order to help her in what she's doing. So I've got Councillor Maxwell, then followed on by Councillor Hansler.
My question is basically that, which is what's happened this week, but in today's paper in the ET, you'll see a big page about horns, about how they just don't feel that they can trust the police. It's massive, and I just think, you know, a small place like Raunds, it's quite sad that they feel that they're not being looked at. And the other issue is this week on Tuesday, my partner went down the high street in Rushden, and this chap was shouting out, I've got the drugs, they're on offer, do you fancy them? And the thing is, the big issue is that these people think they're blazing, they can just go off down the high street as if it's, you know, do you want a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? It's not on. And I just think, I don't personally feel where I live, which is obviously Rushden, I don't think we've seen police presence as it should be. Rushden is a big place, and I think we should have more of it, but we're not. And that's what I'd like to ask. When are we going to see more police presence?
Please.
I'll take that away and talk to the Chief about it. You are aware, Councillor Maxwell, that I'm not an operational lead. I have to do everything through the Chief Constable, but it is my job to represent your views and the views of the public to the Chief. So I'll add that to my list, which is quite long, actually.
So Councillor Hansler, followed by Councillor Mercer.
Yes, I was just wondering where to put this in, but can you put somewhere in your plan, can you have something about reviewing PSPOs, as in public space protection orders?
Public spaces protection orders
Protection
come
orders.
under the local authority now.
I know they do, but they are enforced, aren't they, by the
I think,
police?
again, I think that might be something with assistance in neighbourhood wardens and things, which is something the
Is
Commissioner's
that
office
not
has
under
done.
your... Okay, I'm learning.
Hey, it's not that they're not important, but they're very dependent on collaborative partnership working, aren't they? Which is really key for me in creating community safety, of course. And yeah, it'll be there.
PSPOs, there's very specific measures we have to go through in order to introduce them and then to renew them as well. Happy to, if you want to, happy to speak with you on that, assist there. So, Councillor Mass.
Thank you. And Commissioner, perhaps you could add to your list. There have been organisations such as JAG for many years where councils, councillors and police could discuss local issues. And one in my hometown, also Rushden, which is just being disbanded. So, there needs to be a forum where people can come together to discuss these issues. And if they're disbanded, that's not very helpful.
We do have the IAGs, so local people can feed their concerns into those. Those are the independent advisory groups, which have regular meetings with the police. And I attend at least once a year to those 7 groups we've got.
I am also on the IAG, so I'm aware of that. The trouble is, that's quite vast. There's quite a lot of different organisations, a lot of different parish councils, different organisations on those. So to get there, if you've got like 2 or 3 towns close by that have similar issues, probably similar perpetrators as well, or the same perpetrators, they can get down to actual issues, whereas the IAG is a bit more strategic.
Thank you. So I'm mindful of time. So I've got Councillor Roberts followed by Councillor Randall. This agenda item, ideally we will conclude by 2:30. Clearly, if we've got other stuff to cover, but just if we can be mindful of that. So, Councillor Roberts.
I'll be very quick. Commissioner, it's great to hear what you've said today about starting a safe and sound discussion with the public. I think on occasions, yes, we all want to see more police on the beat, but it's not just that, it's being listened to and then we've got to see action. It's getting the action. And something you said resonated with me, with one of my granddaughters said that, it'd be nice to feel more safe on the streets. And we've all got to get behind that. Forgive me not asking you a question, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, you said we did, I think.
Yeah.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Just following on from Councillor Mercer's about the JAG. The JAGs used to sit there, but nobody else used to know what was going on in the JAGs, and actually, I don't know what difference the actual JAGs used to make, and often some of these places are, I don't know, because I don't know what used to go on in them, because they used to ask if I could go and I wasn't allowed, so I don't know, but to me, it's again, councillors, a lot of people feed into me, I feed back in, so it's just knowing a clear route really for me, just a clear and easy route for reporting.
I'm going to go on to the item on community engagement because it follows on from what people were talking about, if that's okay. So we're doing a huge amount in terms of community engagement, having meetings, but I'm doing the walkabouts with the chief and neighbourhood teams in different locations, and those have proved to be incredibly important in helping us understand what differing neighbourhoods differing needs are. And there has been very quick and fast policing responses to that, I have to say. But we're also doing study tours. So the study tours are different. So that will be people from my office going out with neighbourhood police, with local councillors, with wardens, with housing officers, with local residents associations, with faith groups, and doing walkabouts to identify what is an issue in a particular area. We do a lot of listening to people, so we'll listen to the people who run all the different kind of protection schemes in the area for residents. We have street surgeries where people come and tell us what is going on. We go into the shops and we talk to the retailers. So all of that helps us build a picture, a very holistic picture of what the needs in a particular locality are. And they've been incredibly well received and really helpful in terms of helping people doing that study tool to understand where collaborative work is going to be really helpful. So fly tipping and littering and bins out are not policing issues, but they impact the police because they make areas look neglected and as if nobody cares about them. And it's like an invitation to drug gangs or any gangs to walk in. So having teams of people out with the police who understand that, who then take responsibility for getting that neighbourhood clean by working together, as has just happened in Eastfield, with WNC, NPH, Town Council, the local wardens, whoever, coming together to develop a strategy for that, has been incredibly useful for the police. The other thing that was very useful for the police was they know now they have to be out on the street at 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's when most of the antisocial behaviour and crime is being committed in that particular neighbourhood. Very, very useful. And it's something that's going to be, we will do across the county. And I think it's just absolutely lovely that people in my office are there, and if they can provide support, it might be money, it might be other resources, target hardening or whatever, that they will put that on their plans and they will do that. So that was the community engagement piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear that, because I really do like to focus on community engagement. Just a couple of things really from that. So in terms of when you're going out and gathering all the information, are you using the observatory that Public Health plan to triangulate so you see the demographic as well, so that gives you the richness? And the other thing, I don't know if you know about this, but in other local authorities for years, it started in Western Australia. They built up the communities and they have something called a local area coordinator. And that's, in old words, that's like the old nosy neighbour. So they employ somebody who lives in that neighbourhood to work across a multi-agency team to bring together, it's the first point of contact when something's happening in the neighbourhood. There's a guy called, I can't remember his name, first name is Ralph, but it was in Western Australia 20 years ago. There's about 3 best value reviews on it that show how successful it's been because of all that thing. So it might be something you're worth thinking about as you're starting to gather your data.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What Dr. Cost said just made me think really our laps, and I'm sure that they're across the west as well, but in the north we have 7 laps, and they are a very good source of, the police do attend, various other agencies as well, but it's trying to get all of the agencies together to solve problems, and it's set up initially by the ICB for health, but health includes a huge amount of other things, housing, where people feel safe as well. So those are very good points of call to utilise to get information or to feed information back.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Yeah, I think maybe that's something we'll come back to for another meeting. Is this, because you're evolving your community engagement. You know my keenness on all of those.
And we did a walkabout.
We did, yes. You have to say there was a very fine fish shop on Running Road in Northampton. If you want fresh fish, that's the place to go. So I think you just sort of, I think a continued dialogue on that one. I think any engagement, community engagement, you've got to feel part of it, because you get as soon as you're not feeling part of it, there's a drift, isn't there? So I think that work that you do, and I thoroughly enjoyed our walkabout. The only thing thing, as I say, is when you do your walkabouts, you like to identify some shots which may not help your waistline. So,
And the visit to the mosque was very useful, wasn't it?
yes. Well, I think we could have chatted all day, I think, at the mosque, couldn't we? It's very interesting. I know there's a keenness to just to touch on the vetting, I think, from...
I can cover it very quickly if
Okay.
you want to. So you will all know the history behind this, and you know that after the Nick Adderley case, we made a commitment to you and to the public to have a really good look at vetting and what had happened. And we found it to have been a terrible story, in actual fact. It was shocking. And what we found was there's 2 different levels of vetting that goes on, and they weren't talking to each other. So the fact that that particular person had said different things on each vetting form was never known and never dealt with. Because of that, we've done, the chief has done quite high-level vetting for the top tier of his team in the force, and he's looked at all the things that were missed with the vetting around the previous chief. And he hasn't found any issues, thank goodness, because that would have been really scary, wouldn't it? But so he's done that very high level vetting. So he's checked people's records, he's checked their education qualifications. If they had a military background, he's checked all of that. But we've gone a lot further than that because we're worried about what the implications of all of that have been on a national level. So my office has been in touch with the Home Office because we need the Home Office to be aware of that, because it's their job to make sure those vetting procedures are synchronised. Yesterday we had a meeting with the College of Policing, and they are taking up these issues very much as well. And from now on, all qualifications are going to be checked during a vetting procedure. It's shocking that they weren't, but from now on, not just in our police force, but across the country. So out of something really terrible, because of the work that we have done, and we've done it really, really quickly, well, I say we, it's the chief who's done it, that we are setting the standard now, if you like, for what's going on in the rest of the country, and I'm really, really pleased about that.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Something I'm very concerned about and very surprised is that, okay, I've been through positive vetting and negative vetting, all the various elements of that. But what I don't understand is perhaps, and this is a personal question, is why the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner don't have any security clearances whatsoever.
Well, that isn't quite true, Councillor. Both me and the Deputy have elected to go for to be put through the highest vetting. It's being done at the moment.
It is, because in the past it hasn't been done.
It's not required. It isn't required. But given the context in which we've come in, we felt it was an appropriate thing to do.
I totally agree with you, yes.
No, I concur with that. I've gone through a DBS or whatever it is DBS, isn't it? So
Can I just, it was a question I didn't answer at the last meeting. Me and the Deputy both have higher level DBSs, of course. It's not a requirement.
I think it may not be required. I think the council, it's changing the council, but I think it's really important. So when he rights and responsibilities, I think it's an important aspect of that all the work which councils do. That's definitely. But let's not drift off. So Councillor Mercer, we are beyond time now. So.
Very quickly, thank you for that report. It's shocking that it's so joined up, and if some good can come of that, I'm really pleased. I just wanted quickly to say, have we started on the process for the appointment of new Chief Constable, or is that still to come?
No, we're working on that process as we speak. So we expect things to go live mid-October, end of October, something like that. But we're working through the process now.
Thank you. So I think we'll conclude on that item then. I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, we could. Sorry, Councillor, that's what's the last one.
Looking at vetting, what I find difficult to actually understand is that Nick Adderley who we seem to just think, oh, well, it's fine, it's okay, it isn't okay. The thing is, why did everything go wrong? Why did they not seriously look at, inspect his qualifications, make sure they were up and running, but they're not. And on top of that, I just feel, whilst you are going to have something about, I think at the next meeting maybe, you and the deputy are going to submit your qualifications, etc. Why is it, if we have this problem with Nick Hadley, that we now find that you actually yourselves have still not gone through the right process?
That isn't correct, Chair. There is a fundamental difference between people who are employed and people who are elected and politically appointed. They are not equivalent at all. And the questions around the appointment of previous chiefs rightly belong to previous commissioners.
Yes.
I think we'll move on from that. So James, you should recommend it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So with this item, as with all items on the panel agenda where there's not a specific outcome suggested or recommended, there's the opportunity for the panel as a whole to reach any conclusions, resolutions that it wishes to arising from the discussion. What seemed to be arising from the discussion was a fair degree of warmth from the panel towards the collaborative approach that the Commissioner's taking towards developing the new police, fire and crime plan. I'll put that out there. The panel can agree or disagree as it wishes. And the point was also made about, in turn, the panel itself having an opportunity to have an input. We heard that the Commissioner loves a workshop. That may be something that the panel wants to take up. The how, what, and when could be returned to under the work programme, perhaps if the panel agrees the principle of it.
I think the work programme is, I think you need to get some meat on the bones and things, but I think again, you may remember some members of the panel way back in May last year, that seems a long time ago, so we had an intention of putting a work plan together and all sorts of plans, and the finest plans were somewhat
had an interesting
year. We had an interesting year indeed. So I think maybe we'll have to give consideration to that and then get on to the work programme. But I think your workshops, if we can put it together, I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to do, would it? To sit down with some big pieces of paper and somebody who's got neat writing would be useful. So some actions there. So on that, we'll move on to item 10, if we may. So I'd like to invite Commissioner to present the policing fines. Okay. So I'm on 9. Sorry, 9. I've missed out. Apologies to the Fire Rescue Authority. So 9.
Chair, I'm going to hand this item over to the 151. Is that okay?
Perfect, thank you.
That's what treatment says.
So this, the first report here is the fire monitoring report that lays out the budget and the forecast position at the end of the financial year. I take it as read, and it is quite high level, so I'll obviously welcome any questions. Nothing in here that particularly scares me. I think the fire service is doing well in spending their budget as we'd expect them to, and we've got lots of really good processes in place. I'm really pleased with what the Chief Fire Officer is doing to manage all of this. So I'll welcome any questions from the panel.
Councillor Maxwell.
My first question is, in the payroll, what exactly did they get this year?
It depends which rank we're talking about. I believe they were getting 3%, and the staff got the same as the police. So what the Commissioner will always try to do is to make sure there's parity between police and fire. So some of the ranks will be down to the national fire body to allocate the salaries to, in the same way the police does. but for staff there is some flexibility. So what we ensure happens is that the fire staff aren't disproportionately affected by what the police get. So for example, the amount that police staff are potentially going to get this month will be 4.75% increase. So we'd be looking to do the same for the fire staff as well.
My second question is, on number 6, it's got that the firefighter budget is overspent in the first quarter due to a high level of fire numbers. I'm pleased actually to see that you are still training up new fire people. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so why is it overspent? That's my question.
So there was an additional cohort of firefighters towards the end of the previous financial year, and the idea was that we managed to fill that so that they'd be fully trained in readiness for this summer when there's more chance of wildfires, which generally demand is higher. So we allowed budget to overspend earlier in the year, and that's why workforce planning is very important, that we get the recruitment timed correctly so that it makes sure that we're staffed at the right times. And then we're expecting, when we monitor this, we've got a number of graphs where we can see the number of firefighters is kind of up higher at the beginning of the year, and then we'll have leaves and retirements, and then we'll do the same next year, so you make sure your peak numbers of firefighters is when the most demand is.
Thank you.
So was it Councillor Mills or Councillor Pritchard? We'll go with Councillor Mills next.
Ladies first. Yes, I was slightly confused by this report actually. I worked it out in the end, but it started out saying underspend, and then he explained why there'd been an overspend, and it sort of just suddenly jumped to that. It really makes sense when you see the chart, because you can see, you know, there's obviously overall underspend, but there was obviously the staffing was an overspend. But what I've been used to in the past was if there's any sort of under or over on the individual item, there's some sort of explanation, and I didn't see explanation for response control or community prevention. I just wondered, as there really quite large amounts and large variances, if we could have some sort of explanation of those. So I can see overall, obviously it's an underspend, but it's, you know, obviously community protection is extremely important. So I mean, you know, it's not being able to take on extra staff or whatever, but you know, I just wondered what the reason was.
Yeah. So no, I completely appreciate that. So at 6, it's very brief. I admit. Section 6, D is where I've very briefly mentioned that the control room underspend is due to vacancies within that team, and I know it's not mentioned specifically in the report, but the community prevention underspend is for exactly the same reason. It's for leavers that are to be under the process of being re-recruited.
Sorry, the control room is, so that's response control. It's just terminology.
It is terminology. Yeah. Noted for next time.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. With regards, there isn't much mention with regards to capital expenditure. What anticipated capital expenditure do you have before the end of the fiscal year with regards to significant appliances and so on?
So we are undergoing procurement for additional appliances, but we're not expecting that to be spent by the end of this financial year. That's more into next financial year, and that will be in the region of about £800,000 for a number of appliances. It does depend as to how, because they take an awful long time to build as well, so we've got to account for it at the right point within the year. The main capital expenditure that we're expecting is relating to estates and the building works that we're planning as part of the Estates Master Plan, which I know that's been shared before, but we're not expecting much of that to be spent this year either, because of the length of time it takes for design, planning permission, procurement of contractors, etc. So the amount of capital expenditure in fire for those big projects and big items, big ticket items, other than just general replacement, is quite low in the current financial year.
There's just one other question with regards to, and it probably may be from the Commissioner to answer, is will the Estates Master Plan be in process, or will you actually be revoking it or reorganising it?
There's been a huge amount of work gone into it already, so I'm certainly not going to revoke it, but it is a working document, so it's amended and adapted as needs progress.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. It's looking at both budgets now, looking across. Is there opportunities to do some kind of integration of budgets? So it's kind of, I know you've done it with the support back office service. I think it covers both fire and police. But looking through in order to kind of get some more efficiencies and get money out for you or for your operation if you needed to. Is there going to be opportunities to kind of zero-based budget and look and build back up again and see where there's some possible integration? Because I think I'm just quick looking through it. I looked through it yesterday. I think there's places where there's potential duplication. You can think actually could bring that together as an integrated budget across both the police and fire.
What we have in place now, and we had the second one of these meetings last week, was a monthly joint meeting between the fire chief and the police chief attend, along with enabling services and various members from the organisations. And what we do is, on that standing agenda, not only do we look at the joint operations we've got in place, there's an item on the agenda to bring anything to the table where we think there's more work we can do to join things up. So that's a standing agenda item on that, and there are some things in process. But a lot of the operational stuff have to be done separately. But there's always going to be things that we can look at and try and develop.
I understand that. I'm managing a big bridge myself, but I'm coming from a place when I was in Manchester City and we managed to fully integrate an £800 million budget across health and social care. So what I'm saying is there's an opportunity. I think you've got some opportunities in here to go through and actually integrate some of the budgets in order to release some efficiencies out for your more operational staff. It's just, I know what you're saying, there is ways, but there's always ways.
I think that's
there's always a way around these ones.
Yeah, and what we have to do is we do have to keep the organisations separately, because they're separate legal entities. Absolutely. But there will, as we've done with enabling services, there's always a way to get those efficiencies if we can make it happen.
Good to hear. Thank you.
So we'll go to Councillor Maxwell, and then I think we're pretty much there. So Councillor Maxwell.
Yeah, it's just a question which came up last year actually. You were in the process of actually purchasing more fire engines to go higher up. Did that ever materialise? Did we actually get those fire engines which have ladders go up further than the second and third floor?
Yes, there was a aerial appliance that we purchased last year. I think that was, I'm sure we spoke about it at the previous meeting, but yeah, that was a little while ago now.
You're not sure all about it. Would you like to go, maybe go to the top?
Yeah, I'd like to.
We did think about hiring yourself. Sure, health and safety.
So thank you for that. So then note that report, and then we'll move on to now item 10, which I think we should be doing. So the police finance update. So,
as before, if I say this report is read, similar kind of financial situation, for similar kind of reasons really. Nothing groundbreaking I really need to pick out, but do ask any questions you feel you need to.
Yeah, just a question for Danielle really. Having seen this budget only very recently for the first time, are you happy that the proportion of money that's given to the force and kept by your office is right?
I am. My office undertakes a huge amount of preventative work, which I think is really, in the circumstances in which we're in, is really, really helpful. I'm pleased it's in my office and hasn't been outsourced, because that means we can keep a really good grip on it and deploy resources as they're needed. So yeah, I think we've got that bit right.
thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. On page 85, item C, once again we are obviously underspent with PCSOs, and obviously the funds will actually be transferred into funding. But having said that, what are we, and probably for the Commissioner, what are we actually going to do to increase the PCSOs? And obviously I speak from a rural community, and obviously, you know, everything that comes up with regards to the panels is in fact based upon large towns and of course, you know, Northampton, Daventry and so on. But what is going to happen with PCSOs, which are the lifeblood of the rural community?
Lovely question, and thank you so much for that. The previous chief didn't like PCSOs, and that's why they were cut. The present one does. I do. I've been listening to a lot of people in the rural communities and in the small towns. Everybody loves PCSOs. From my point of view, it's absolute folly to cut them. We're engaged in a recruitment drive at the moment, and it will be something that we keep at the top of the agenda. We're looking forward to when the government announces exactly what is going to be happening with the new 13,000 officers. They have said that's going to be a mixture of specialist PCSOs and warranted officers, but we've not had any further details, but we are expecting to benefit from that.
It's an interesting one, this, it's a challenge in recruitment, because those that become PCSOs then move on to policing, but of course with our PSPOs, the Commissioner's Office has funded some neighbourhood wardens and things in order to help with ASB and things, and maybe that's something that should be a consideration. So it's a different model, because if we're creating, whether it be an apprenticeship in essence as from a PCSO, there's that natural lead through, because it's already thinking individuals, so maybe that's something that we might want to think about as north and west on, because it's been an ongoing problem. This isn't the first time, is it, where there's been that underspend, and just because there's that pressure back to the police chief to, if you don't spend it, we're having it back, but that doesn't then serve our communities, does it? So something to think on.
We are looking to diversify our workforce, so we are hoping to tap into untapped communities with this particular strand of work. And I am really pleased to hear from everybody that PCSOs often come in at a much older age than new police recruits. So that's giving me a lot of optimism. I think we ought to make sure our marketing is addressing that demographic.
Councillor Maxwell.
My question is B, 8B. It says here that following a successful recruitment achieved last year, we were then awarded £1 million by the Home Office. Has that gone? And secondly, how many more police people are we expected to be recruiting this year going on to next year?
So the £1 million was provided as part of the grant settlement on top of our usual grant. So we're receiving that along with the other Home Office settlements, and that does fund these additional officers that we have in place. So it is being spent, and if it's not spent, there's nothing we have to spend it.
And how many police officers have we got?
So we've got around 1,500.
We have.
So yes, so we're maintaining that target. So we don't currently think there's any chance that we will go under that target, and we don't feel there's any way that we'll have any of that money taken off of us, which would be the case if we didn't meet the target. So we're happy we're meeting the target. What we would like to do is to get that up even a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So that's what the recruitment plan does. Unfortunately, we can't stop people retiring, and we can't stop people failing vetting, and that's something that certainly, because of the amount of vetting that's done, there are some people who apply for jobs and then don't get them. So it is a challenge. So we always have to make sure that we recruit double the amount that we think are actually going to hit the ground working. So many do drop out. But we've maximised all of the cohorts. There's a limit to how many officers you can have in a cohort due to the training capacity and that kind of thing. We've certainly maximised all of that and planned them in such a way that it aligns to when people are leaving, and that there's enough capacity to do the training and to reduce the amount of abstractions with the rest of the workforce.
Do you see a possibility of increasing the police and maybe also having the apprenticeship scheme running?
So we do already have apprenticeship cohorts coming through, so we tend to do one cohort or two a year. They are less popular than the other cohorts because historically they have been paid less. Now they are paid the same. So we try and mix the types of cohorts so it suits and is the most attractive to the most number of people. As for increasing establishment further, that will completely depend on what the budget says when we hear about it, and also how that fits in what the plan intends to do as well, because there's going to be some decisions to be made about that. And as we said at the beginning of the meeting, we'd always love to have more officers in, and if we can get more than 1.9 per thousand population, that would be brilliant. But it all comes down to money.
Thank you.
Dr. Cost.
Thank you. Just picking up on the PCSOs, which I think are great, I really endorse that going forward. What have you picked up in your thinking? Because I know talking to colleagues in West Midlands Police about, the national early prison release, there's a lot of concern about the communities and safety in that respect. So kind of building that into your PCO marketing about, communities feeling safer, because there is a real concern. So West Midlands Police are really concerned about the amount of release that's going into communities not knowing where they're going. I know they've activated Mappa and Marrack in order to keep an eye on that, but what are we going to do in Northamptonshire then with that, in kind of that safe bit? Is it going to link into this PSO, this kind of recruitment drive, do you think?
I suggest that is a two principal question.
That's an operational question, to be honest with you. But there are concerns about it. And one of the concerns isn't about policing, but it's about how all the other services, like housing, the benefit system, the welfare system, is going to support those people. We need to be working in a very integrated way, don't we?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we were sensitive to that. That's it's without question on the radar.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we note that report. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 11 and James.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the standard item that is reported to each meeting of the panel to enable it to take stock of its existing work programme, to review what's included already, what issues may be emerging, whether that's suggestions from panel members, issues that may arise from discussion at panel meetings, suggestions from the Commissioner, and any other source with a view to ensuring that the panel's overall work programme picks up its statutory tasks and makes best use of the collective resources and capacity of the panel. So the work programme as it currently stands is set out at the appendix. The preceding items on the agenda today, the delivery update, the two finance updates, have effectively been standing items of business for the panel in previous years, but it's open to the panel to agree that it wants those to consider to continue, or to make any suggestions, requests in terms of what's brought to it in future. And just to highlight as well that there's an item on there around staffing in the Commissioner's office that the Chair requested be added to the work programme. And then on page 96, some items which were identified as topics for scrutiny at the previous panel meeting, but haven't yet been allocated to particular panel meetings. So they will need to be kept on the radar. But as I say, Chair, this is an item that will come to each meeting really with a view to ensuring the panel's attention and capacity is focused to best effect. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions.
So, is there any? Councillor Mercer?
Well, as mentioned earlier on in the meeting, I think we need to add on to the agenda of the sort of workshop on the plan. Obviously we'll be guided by the Commissioner's officers to the timing of that. So I would like to see that added. The other thing is we've said in the papers here about a meeting to meet the two chiefs outside this meeting. That was said in July, we're now in September, so I would hope that that wouldn't be too long in coming.
Yeah, I think there's a key. So I think, you know, particularly the new chief officer, just was still in that position with the chief council as well. We need to get something on that. So I'm not sure, but so I'll just do it. So Dr. Gus, Councillor Maxwell, and then Councillor Bishop.
Okay, so just so picking up from talking with West Midland Police College, there is an issue. There's a couple of things that worry. One is around the prison release, which I think is something that needs to probably be asked them to do some assurance on. I don't know, come back. The other bit is the concern that Northamptonshire is the second highest police in the country for strip searching children. There's a real safeguarding issue around that, and I think there is we should ask them to come back with an assurance or something needs just to, because it is quite a worry and it's nationally being flagged.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think the Commission needs to hold to account on that. That's a massive question, and with a massive uptake with SEM needs, etc. I think it's a complex area. I think that we need some reassurance.
Yeah, so it's just an assurance of what are they doing, what you know, because at the moment they're flagging up as second worst in the country at the minute.
Which is concerning.
Yeah.
Very. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes. When you look at the work programme, when you look at the when you look at the situation with regards to the precept, isn't it a bit late to have it on the 5th of February? Surely we should have it earlier so that we can actually look at it and comment on it. James?
I think the meeting on the task on the 5th of February is the very specific one for the Commissioner to present her final draft precepts to the panel to scrutinise and report on. That doesn't prevent earlier engagement with the panel on the development of the precepts. It's something that the panel's typically done via a briefing session, held in January, to get an idea of the budget environment and how that's feeding into work towards the development of the precepts. And the Commissioner's Office, the Commissioner, are very happy for that to happen at the start of 25 as well. And just on the 5th of February again, the legislation is actually very precise about the date by which the Commissioner has to produce their draft precept, and the date by which the panel has to meet and report on the draft precept. There's not a great deal of flexibility there, which governs why that particular task is put down for the start of February.
Do you want to come back on that?
It was just that I remember the previous Commissioner made the invitation that any of the panel members could sit in on some of his meetings with regards to formulating the budget.
I think we can write to the Commissioner on that. Obviously there's a lot of engagement the Commissioner's looking for anyway, isn't there now? So give us your wise thinking, James.
Well, I think the panel can ask. It's for the Commissioner to consider her response. You know, the offer is already there, and I need to communicate with the panel about potential dates for the budget workshop. I think if the panel is asking if there's an opportunity to go beyond that and for panel members to sit in on other activities supporting the development of the precept, then, as I say, it's in the panel's power to ask, it's in the Commissioner's power to say yes or no, depending upon what approach she wants to take.
But if we don't ask, we won't get it. So, Councillor Maxwell.
Following Councillor Moses has seen the police, fire and the police chief, I think it's long overdue. We haven't seen them actually now for over a year, and I think that we do need to touch base and find out what they're actually thinking. The second thing that I think I'd like to bring up is when open days happen in fire stations, it would be quite nice to know that they're happening. Whereas recently there was one in Wellingborough and we weren't aware of it, but it would be quite nice to pop along and have a look to see what they're actually doing.
I think it's not really the business of this plan, but
It isn't.
noted, I think, yeah, that's almost community engagement. Well, it is community engagement, isn't it? So, Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I'd skipped my mind earlier on, but yesterday the HMIC FRS report on the fire service was published. At least I saw a Telegraph article on it. And we don't ever seem to have anything on our agendas to sort of tag it off to discuss, you know, the findings and whether, you know, they're good or, you know, otherwise. So I know that's sort of more the operational side, but it's basically very much at the heart of, you know, what the public sees and whether it gains confidence in the services. So I don't know if there's one due for the police, but I certainly think for the fire it would be useful for us to have some sort of commentary on what you know, any plans to put in any procedures to for the items that have been flagged as deficient.
Well, it was only published yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, there's a, you know, I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at it, but there's a whole matter around culture still. So I think we all, if we could send a link around to everybody so we've got that, I think it'd be useful. I'll be surprised if the Commission doesn't come back and present something like that. I would expect that to happen. But back to, so this particular item, agenda, so are we happy with the outline work programme? Yes.
As I say, I think it might be useful to actually put on the agenda the HMRC report and plans around it.
And is the panel also happy to add the areas around assurance on prison release and the fact that Northamptonshire is the second highest in the country in relation to strip searching young people? They would of course need to be, because of the respective responsibilities of the panel and the Commissioner, they would need to be expressed in terms of the panel looking at the Commissioner's level of insurance, level of confidence, and how she was holding to account Northamptonshire Police on those two issues.
I think on the strip searching, I think that is something which I think is absolutely this panel's gift. In relation to the prison releases, I mean that actually touches all our councils as well. It's a much broader thing. It's not just policing, because you know
It's everything.
It's everything. And you know, as local authorities, we were informed. Western, well, I know the West was, so I would expect the North to, so they would have been provided with the information in that, and our various teams would have looked at that and the potential of homelessness, etc., and of course they're not coming from that. So I don't think that's necessarily the business of this panel, but certainly with regard to the strip searching, I think we really do need to understand that. Councillor Rand.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered, like you're picking up from that data, but where have you seen that data and what else is on that list? So without just seeing a list of, you know, for me, I haven't seen that statistic. And
So
I don't know what other
it's a
statistics
national
are on there.
statistic, and it's Northamptonshire, Cambridgeshire. Okay, we can tell you the link, but it's out there. It's been out there for a while.
But is that not something that we should actually see the list and go through the list and see what, if there's any, because there might be some other things on that list that might be concerning to us.
Yeah.
But as I haven't seen the list, I don't know what else is on the list. I mean, it could be stop and search on, you know, ethnic minority is one of the worst. You know, I don't know what's on that list.
It was a focus on the on the child, on strict dressing children because of what happened in Hackney with
Yes.
the young girl,
Yeah.
and it was a focus on that, so they did a national trawl through of all the data, police data on children's strict search. That's what's happened. I picked it up because in my role that Birmingham was safeguarding I would do, so I picked it up and I just thought that's a bit worrying, and so it's just seeking some assurances about what's happening in Northamptonshire. It might have improved, I don't know, but we need to know.
But on that, if it's, I mean, I don't always like percentages, I like numbers. So could it be that, you know, you wouldn't expect really that young people would be strip searched like that, you know?
Well, you
Might
would
not
expect
suggest
them they
that-
are.
So it's, you know, if it was like 2 or 3 or 4, or was it 100 or, you know,
It's quite
but I would like to see all that statistic before we just specifically said, we just want to look at that, because there might be more things.
James, from the country.
Yeah, as with for the panel, as with all scrutiny bodies, there's an opportunity to step things up and step things down. By which I mean, this has been raised as a potential area of concern. In the first instance, if the panel resolves today that this is a topic area that can be included in the work programme, one scenario that could then follow is that the Commissioner proactively sends some information to the panel that explains, well, actually, it's not as much of a concern as it appears. In which case, the panel can then say, well, okay, we're satisfied. It doesn't justify going into it in any more detail. That is one scenario. I'm not saying that is the scenario in this case, or that's what will occur. The point I'm making is the panel can taking one sort of action doesn't then preclude the panel from taking further action on a topic, and equally, if it identifies something that seems like it may be a concern and then finds out that it isn't as much as it thought, it can step it down again. It doesn't need to pursue it further. It's not a there's not only one. Deciding to take one action on a topic doesn't preclude that from being changed if that's then justified, or from further action being taken if it's merited. Sorry, I was conscious that I wasn't explaining that as well as I could, but I think you got the sense.
Yeah, there's a clear appetite, I think, from the panel that we need to know more in order to form as to whether it's been stepped up further or stepped down. I think that'd be a fair way to...
Surely this would actually derive from having the acting chief constable in front of us.
Well,
he would be the one that would answer.
But we hold to account the Commissioner, and the Commissioner in turn does, you know, there's a line of communication in there. I think we need to know more. Andy.
Yeah, I mean, this whole debate is, having been on the other side, it's really interesting as to what level does a scrutiny board get involved in, and it is really challenging as to, because you do want to know those answers, because you want to be able to reassure your community that the right things are being done. So it is really tricky, and I suppose it's about the way you ask the question to the Commissioner. And one thing I forgot to ask her when she was here in one of her reports, she talks about, and I have sat on it, so there's an accountability board where the senior police officers are held to account by the Commissioner, and she talks also about the same thing for fire. What I don't know is whether we are allowed to observe those meetings to get reassurance that she is properly holding them to account, because it is her job to do that, or whether the minutes are public and we can see the minutes of the accountability board, because I'd want to know that she is holding those two chiefs to account, and the mechanism for her to do that is the accountability boards.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether we see the minutes of the accountability boards, because these are the sorts of questions that we would be wanting her to be asking at her accountability board with the chief, to get reassurance, to provide us with the reassurance that she's holding them properly to account. Does that make sense?
And it's a task then.
So I was going to ask her, but I forgot to ask her whether we could see the minutes of the accountability boards to reassure us. Because the only reason I'd want the two chiefs here is to ask them whether they feel supported and properly scrutinised by the Commissioner, because our job is to make sure the Commissioner does her job right.
That's right.
if that makes sense.
But we've not seen them actually for almost 2 years.
No, but if they turn up and you're going to ask them about burglaries in Kettering or robberies in Devon, that's not what they would be. That's not our place. But to ask, I think to ask them, do you feel properly managed? Do you feel supported? She's got a budget of £5.5 million to support policing. Do they feel that she's adding value? That's the sort of thing I'd want to be asking.
They want more.
James is going to come in next.
Yeah, the minutes of the two accountability boards are published on the Commissioner's website, and when in previous years when the panels received the delivery update, similar to the one on the agenda today, those delivery updates included some summaries of recent issues considered by the accountability board. So the information is there, and I mean, it picks up on a point I was going to raise as well, which is you've had the delivery update, you've had the two finance updates on the agenda today. Are those two reports, three reports, sorry, something that the panel wants to continue as standing items of business? They have been in the past, but the current panel is not obligated to do exactly what its predecessor did. It's for the panel to decide what goes on its agenda. I think I'm pretty confident in saying I think the Commissioner's office would be happy to provide them, but it's the panel's agenda, ultimately.
I think there was much nodding around the table there.
You want to continue receiving the finance updates and the delivery updates.
Yes,
in some
so. And I think.
But sorry, is that where we could ask them for the specifics we've talked about now to be in that?
So in those accountability board, I think we would be interesting to understand as to whether there is a way of attending to observe. So, James.
Okay, I think there are at least two different questions here. So, firstly, is there scope for panel members to attend, observe the accountability boards?
Yep.
Secondly, I think as a minimum, it sounds as if the panel wants to ask for some further information about the situation that's been raised around strip searching of young people. That would enable the panel then to decide whether that provided it with sufficient assurance and it didn't need to do anything more, or perhaps it wanted to have that a further item on the agenda with the Commissioner about that topic.
Pretty much knows it, isn't it?
Possibly we could also ask if the minutes, in the way, the summary of the minutes is the way we used to have, is in the update, because I think that was useful, because we wouldn't necessarily think to go and look on the website. It's just useful to have it all in one place, because it is part of our holding, as Andy said, is part of us, holding the Commission to account.
Yeah, I think yes. I think that would change a bit. I was not going to say no. I'm surely not. But,
all I was going to say was, if the minutes of the accountability boards are published on the Commissioner's website as standard, then if Democratic Services know approximately when they're going to be published, then we can ensure that panel members are made aware that they are published. That might have the benefit that if you've got an accountability board and the next following panel meeting is not taking place, for a matter of weeks or months, panel members would be made aware of the minutes sooner than if you had to wait for them to be included in a report to the next panel meeting.
Councillor Maxwell.
Is it possible also equally to have the statistics on the crimes which are actually committed in the county, that we actually know how many people have done whatever crime has actually occurred?
Do we not always have had that?
No, we don't. It's not in here. We don't.
No, if you never had that asked that question before, like is these sort of questions not been asked before? Is that why we've never had it, or what?
Well, last time we were actually, we did ask this question about having the police and fire here, and Mrs. Stone has decided no, we weren't allowed to have it. She wasn't going to agree to it. But I would like to know...
James come in on that.
It wasn't directly related to Councillor Maxwell's point, although it is in a sense. What I wanted to say was, and it's something you referred to earlier in the meeting, Chair, I think due to circumstances, this panel has had about a year, if not longer, where it hasn't been conducting business as usual. No. And because of that, the panel, there is great scope for the panel to think about how it wants to conduct business as usual. You know, what agenda items it wants to have to panel meetings, what it wants to be on the work programme. As you said, Chair, we had a meeting in June 2023 where you talked about how you'd like the panel to work and things you'd like it to do. Then that was overtaken by events for virtually the next calendar year, and even including the last meeting of the panel in July, in the sense of there was a new commissioner, there were new independent members joining the panel. It hasn't had a settled period, and because of that, there's great scope for the panel to think about how it would like to work as normal.
I think just off the back of that, I think actually this afternoon, longer standing members and newer members, I think we've actually come a really long way this afternoon because that past year was extremely difficult for all the members. But I think just the discussions this afternoon around the work programme, actually we're now, for the first time in a long time, feels the panel's been able to get back to its core business. So I'm really encouraged by the discussion. So in answering your question, when I think is this not how it worked before? It's almost impossible, it's not possible, but it was a long time ago that we were operating in a way in which we expected the panel to work. I mean, it was an exceptional year last year. I think there's a lot of eyes on to this panel, and it was criticised, but it couldn't do a lot. And that's a completely different situation. Sorry, Wendy.
Yeah, no, just coming back on that, obviously the panel's been going for 3 years, not just the 1 year. So what was happening in the year 1 and year 2? Or like year 1, it would have been embedding itself. Year 2, I would have expected the panel to...
Well, it's been around for much longer than that.
Yeah, so what has been going on all previous,
the panel, I mean, just as a slight history lesson, so it was quite pedestrian, like, whether it's reports and it's questions, etc., and that was one of the frustrations I think a lot of the panel members felt. So we had our first couple of years, and then finding its feet. Of course, we knew unitary authority, etc. And at that juncture, after 2 years, I came forward as the chair, and there was an enthusiasm to really, engage with the public a lot more. And didn't we just do that? Following on from that, but not in a way we expected. So we're now getting back to business as usual. It's our panel, and we can steer it as to the way we want it. And I think this afternoon we're getting a real steer from members of that. We've got a really good turnout. Sometimes we've been thinner than we would like, but really I think the desire to do things differently was overtaken, and we're now back on track. And I think, as I say, long-standing members of the panel. Any one of you might want to just speak up, so Councillor Mercer might be coming.
I mean, this has been a long-standing problem. We have, in the past, sometimes had statistics of crimes and what is up, what is down, and some members have asked for more, but there's sometimes been a reluctance to provide that information because it's seen as operational. It's seen as what are the police doing, and we shouldn't be doing that. Unfortunately, it's sort of a double-edged sword because we actually need to see that in order to hold the Commissioner to account. Now, what they've tended to do is say, okay, you will see that information when you meet the Chief Constable. And the last time we did meet the Chief Constable, he did indeed present all those figures to us. But that was a long while ago. So it is quite, sometimes there might be some resistance to actually bring us those figures. It might be possible perhaps to point us in the direction of them so we can look at them outside the meeting. But I have a feeling, because we've been told really it's not really appropriate to bring them to the meeting, the chiefs, that is, those figures might possibly be in the same category.
Did we not? We used to get all those sort of figures, I thought, from the Community Safety Partnership. Are they not all there?
The CSPs, yeah, absolutely. There's a comprehensive, you've got down to the
that's right. You've got up and down trends. Do we?
But I think again I think that's a different thing. I think with regard to the chief fire officer and the chief constable, I think they could be brought to this meeting, but there's a reluctance or whatever, however you want to term it. But I think hopefully both of them are watching this afternoon. Is that it would be nice for the panel to be invited across to Derby House on a police note and on a fire note. I think it's useful to us as panel members as we go back out into our communities. So I think for us to get a better understanding and to meet Nikki Watson. We've met Nikki, the new chief fire officer, through the confirmation hearing and things, but we've not had an opportunity to meet her beyond that. And of course, previous chief fire officers we got to know better. Again, I think that let's look forward, not back. We've got clear water now. I think we can reach out and hopefully get an invitation. It's always exciting. We might see that great big shiny fire engine that goes up all over the air as well. So
to drive it.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw this out for thinking. But as a panel, why don't we? Because I'm a chair for a panel in Birmingham. So what I do every year is I do an annual report. I say what our core duties are, what our priorities are, where we're focusing on our sort of assurance. Couldn't we do something similar so that it goes out there, it's a public document and the public can see how it's working as a panel, can say these are the areas of focus, this is how we sort assurance, and this is what we do, but this is what we don't do. So everybody's absolutely clear. It doesn't have to be war and peace. It's probably only about a 6 or 8 page document. I don't know what people think about that, but it might just help.
We did do quite a few reminders across the past year about what the panel was able to do. There was a huge amount of expectation, and I think that it'd be nice to have an expectation setting document. But I think at this point, I think the best thing we can do is to get back to conducting our business at first. I think, and this work plan is key to that. There was a real enthusiasm in May of last year to get people to come along to the meetings, public can ask questions and things. So I think that will be the first stepping stone, if you like. But police and crime panels, they vary massively across the whole country. So I think the complexion of our panel, we can collectively form that, and whatever happens in the elections in years to come, hopefully that would be, I think, a really good thing that we can do. There's that work plan and being welcoming, because the panel wasn't always very exciting. That would be an understatement for people to come along to, and then that completely changed. I mean, we had a packed house on a number of occasions. So I think, careful what you wish for. So yeah, I think just with us getting back to the panel, and I think that refocus, we've had sort of a setback, if you want to call it that, with everything that happened, is a reset for a comeback, and this is our comeback now for the panel to set its agenda, see how it wants to work, and to be more inclusive. So I've got Andy, and then
I think it would be easier to work out exactly what we want in the work plan once we've got the plan. Because at the moment we're supposed to be holding the Commissioner to account for the delivery of the plan, and we don't yet have the plan. So we are in a bit of hiatus until December, is it, when the plan is? They've got the current plan, but how do you hold somebody to account for somebody else's plan? It's difficult. So I think we need the opportunity to influence the plan, and then whatever that plan is, we've then got to really focus on the delivery of that plan and holding the Commissioner to account for the delivery of that plan. So what I'm still not 100% sure is the plan being signed off in December? Is that the early stages of it? Because otherwise we'll be in hiatus for a year waiting for a plan to hold the Commission to account to.
Well, there's the plan that the previous Commissioners brought forward, and that's the plan that they're working to, so they're now working on a new plan. So that is the plan we're currently holding the Commissioner Dr. Cuss has pointed out, there's an area of concern that's come up, and that's for us to scan the horizon and see those things. And a number pops up. It's like, not comfortable with that. You need to really understand that, because it's our county that this is happening in, and we need to really need to understand that. So I think that, again, as panel members, and that was another observation way back in May, June of last year, was it's for us to be, making it our business, seeing what's going on, and then if it's relevant to the business that we conduct as this panel, is to bring it forward. James squeeze finger up in the highest volume.
No, sorry, Chair. I mean, just in relation to the development of the police fire and crime plan, the Commissioner can't agree. The Commissioner agrees the police fire and crime plan. The Commissioner can't agree the plan until it's been subject to scrutiny by the panel. So if the Commissioner is saying the plan will come to the panel in December, then on the face of it, that would be that scrutiny before the Commissioner agrees the plan shortly afterwards. And I mean, looking at it practically, the Commissioner is statutorily required to issue a plan in the year following, in the financial year following an ordinary election. So if it doesn't come in December, there isn't much longer until we get to the end of 24-25 for it to come. And the Commissioner's going to need to bring draft precepts at the start to the panel at the start of 2025. Logically, they'll be informed by the police fire and crime plan. So if the Commissioner doesn't bring the final draft plan in December, there isn't very much longer afterwards in which he will have to bring it. It sounds as if it's coming to the panel in December.
Yeah, thank you, James. I think we've pretty much gone through it. So, yes, please.
It was just in relation to the earlier point. I didn't want to interrupt your debate there about accountability boards, but just to say that there are quite a few nationally where the Commissioner conducts those in public, or films them, or publishes the reports for them. So if you wanted to encourage the Commissioner to show greater transparency and accountability, one option might be to point to that different practice that exists elsewhere.
We looked like one of those dogs on the back shelf of the car over the years. We're all nodding our heads.
That's because we don't like things behind closed doors, do we? It's much better to be out in the open.
So I think that pretty much concludes on the work plan. Sorry, James, an awful lot of notes there. So the item 12, plates and conduct matters update. So James, show again.
Thank you. So this is a report that's brought to the panel every 6 months to assist it in taking an overview of the operation of its statutory functions with relation to dealing with complaints or conduct matters concerning the Commissioner. So this report's slightly anomalous in that the period covers means it deals with the very end of Stephen Mould's term in office and the start of Daniel Stone's. And that is reflected in the fact that the report differentiates between complaints about the one Commissioner or the other. So the report refers in the appendix to the outcome of a complaint about Stephen Mould, that was dealt with at the very end of his term, and refers to 3 current complaints about Daniel Stone that are in the process of being dealt with through the agreed process in accordance with the panel's informal resolution protocol. I'm happy to take any questions about the report, Chair, but as I say, it is an update on the operation of the function. It's very much not intended to be about the main panel discussing the detail of individual complaints.
I'm going to read to that one. Councillor Mercer.
Just a quick question. I'm aware that you've asked for dates from possible dates for the complaints panel to meet. I just wondered if that if you had a date set yet.
Not quite.
Councillor Maxwell?
I don't know whether this is appropriate to bring it up now, but is there a possibility with the previous police chief that we can ask whether or not he is going to be asked to give back the £146 that he's actually been paid during the period he left and then was sacked?
I'd like to think it was only £146.
Well,
wages,
wages.
That's not for this. That's not.
No.
For this.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So if we so we have to note the content of that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there's no business that I'm well. So we will conclude the meeting.